Welcome to Sleepy Stories, a channel where knowledge unfolds slowly and clearly. Tonight, we will learn about the hidden part of our planet, the deep sea, and we'll do it in a calm way that helps your mind settle. If you don't fall asleep right away, that's normal. Just let the words move at their own pace while your breathing evens out. If you enjoy these quiet journeys of science, we invite you to like and subscribe so we can continue bringing you more stories of the natural world. More than 70% of Earth's surface is covered by ocean, yet less than 1% of its deep floor has been directly explored. What scientists call the deep sea includes everything below about 200 meters, where sunlight no longer supports photosynthesis. The pressure there rises by roughly 1 atmosphere every 10 meters, and temperatures drop toward 2 degrees Celsius. At the deepest known point, the Challenger Deep, in the Mariana Trench, the weight of the water above exerts over 1,000 times the pressure you feel at sea level. These conditions make the deep ocean one of the most extreme environments on Earth, but also one of the most stable. The ocean functions as a central part of the planet's climate system. It stores heat, absorbs carbon dioxide, and moves vast amounts of energy through global circulation. Currents connect continents, redistribute oxygen, and influence weather patterns everywhere. Studying these systems helps scientists understand how the planet maintains balance and why even small changes in ocean chemistry affect life on land. Beneath the surface, light fades rapidly. Red and orange wavelengths vanish within a few dozen meters. By 1 kilometer down, only a faint blue remains. Below that, darkness is almost complete. Sound becomes the primary carrier of information. Whales, submarines, and research sensors rely on it because it travels far more efficiently through water than through air. The deep sea is therefore a world defined by pressure and sound, not by sight. Modern mapping shows how little of this landscape we have seen. Sonar reveals mountain chains longer than any on land and trenches that cut 11 kilometers deep. Submersible expeditions have recorded temperatures from boiling vents to icy plains and have measured pressures that deform metal. Yet even under those extremes, life thrives. Microbes, fish, and invertebrates that rely not on sunlight but on chemical energy released from the Earth's crust. Our understanding of the deep sea has expanded mainly in the last few decades. Before remotely operated vehicles and pressure-resistant sensors, scientists could only guess what existed beyond a few hundred meters. Now, they can send cameras and probes that withstand the crushing weight. Each new mission discovers species with unique adaptations, transparent skins, flexible proteins, and slow metabolisms that challenge assumptions about the limits of biology. Every descent adds another layer to the map of life, showing that Earth's most alien environment lies beneath its own surface. The deep ocean is also the planet's largest carbon sink. Dissolved gases and organic matter descend continuously from the surface, forming what oceanographers call marine snow. This steady fall of microscopic particles feeds the abyssal ecosystem and locks carbon away for centuries. By moderating carbon dioxide levels, the deep sea influences the temperature of the atmosphere and stabilizes climate patterns. In that sense, the calm water beneath the waves is not passive. It is an active participant in Earth's equilibrium. Think of the ocean as a single, interconnected system. Its currents, known collectively as the thermohaline conveyor, move cold, dense water from the poles to the tropics and return warmer water back again. This motion transports nutrients, regulates global temperature, and supports the oxygen cycle that sustains life everywhere. Nearly half of the oxygen you breathe originates from tiny plankton floating in sunlit layers above, organisms that depend on minerals and chemistry rising from the depths below. Every inhalation links you, in a measurable way, to the sea. From space, Earth appears blue because of this vast body of water. but the color also represents how little of the ocean we truly know. Satellites can measure surface height and temperature, yet cannot see beyond a thin skin. Beneath that surface is an environment still largely hidden, one that covers more area than all the continents combined. The ocean floor holds volcanoes, canyons, and ridges that continuously reshape the planet's crust. In those silent regions, time moves slowly and processes unfold over millennia. As we begin this exploration, remember that the deep sea is not a void. It is filled with structure, chemistry, and rhythm. It shelters life forms adapted to pressure rather than air, to darkness rather than light. Studying it helps scientists understand how life can persist in extreme conditions, not only on Earth but possibly on other worlds with oceans beneath ice. So, as you settle into the stillness of the night, imagine the planet breathing through its oceans. Beneath the waves, currents circulate like slow pulses, and within those movements lie the foundations of climate, biology, and balance. The secrets of the deep sea are not hidden from us forever. They are waiting quietly, patient as the tides themselves, ready to reveal how our world truly works. The ocean is not one continuous mass of uniform water. It is a layered structure shaped by light, temperature, and pressure, stacked like a vast invisible staircase leading down through darkness. Scientists divide this vertical column into zones, each with its own physics, chemistry, and life forms. Understanding these layers reveals how the ocean regulates Earth's climate and why every meter downward brings a different world. The first layer is the epipelagic zone, extending from the surface to about 200 meters. Sunlight penetrates this region strongly enough for photosynthesis, making it the most biologically productive part of the sea. Here, phytoplankton convert carbon dioxide into organic matter, releasing oxygen in the process. The water mixes easily through wind and waves, distributing nutrients and heat. Temperatures can vary from tropical warmth to near freezing polar seas, but the presence of light defines this realm more than any other factor. It is the visible ocean, the one we sail upon and see from shore. Below it lies the mesopelagic, often called the twilight zone. Light fades rapidly here. By 500 meters, it is dim and blue, insufficient for photosynthesis, but still enough for vision. Many creatures in this layer migrate upward at night to feed and downward by day to hide, performing the planet's largest daily movement of biomass. Temperatures decline steeply, forming the thermocline, a boundary where warm surface water meets cold depths. This gradient drives circulation and influences weather far above the waves. Descending further, we enter the bathypelagic, or midnight zone, reaching to about 4,000 meters. Sunlight is gone, pressure climbs beyond 400 atmospheres. Temperatures hover near 2 degrees Celsius and remain constant year-round. Life persists, adapted to scarcity. Anglerfish, jellyfish, and deep-sea shrimp use bioluminescence to hunt or signal in total darkness. Here, metabolism slows. Movements are measured and deliberate, conserving energy in a world where food drifts down like faint snow. Beneath this lies the abyssal zone, stretching to 6,000 meters. The terrain flattens into broad plains covered with fine sediment. It seems still, yet it forms the largest habitat on Earth. Microbes, brittle stars, and sea cucumbers feed on the steady rain of detritus from above. Oxygen remains available because cold, dense water sinks from the polar regions, carrying life-supporting gases into the depths. The abyss functions as a vast recycling system, turning decay into renewal. At the very bottom is the hadal zone, found in trenches and deep fractures that can reach nearly 11 kilometers. The pressure here exceeds 1,000 atmospheres, enough to crush most materials. Only specialized organisms endure it. Amphipods with flexible shells, snailfish with gelatinous bodies, and microbial communities living on chemical energy from the crust. Exploration of these regions requires titanium hulls and robotic arms, yet every dive reveals new species. The Hydrothermal world is not barren but simply beyond ordinary comprehension. Each layer interacts with the others through slow physical exchange. Currents carry oxygen downward and nutrients upward. Particles sink, dissolve, and rise again as part of the biological pump that connects surface life with the deep. The entire column behaves as one continuous system governed by temperature, salinity, and gravity. Scientists call this dynamic balance stratification, and it explains why the ocean both stabilizes climate and supports extraordinary biodiversity. If you think of these layers not as barriers but as gradients, you begin to sense the quiet order that governs the sea. Energy, heat, and matter flow smoothly between them, forming an elegant chain of cause and effect. For every bright reef fish above, there are silent counterparts below, each adapted to its pressure and darkness. The ocean's vertical structure is a record of physical law translated into living form. As your breathing evens, imagine those transitions, the surface shimmering with light, the twilight fading, and the deep settling into steady calm. Every kilometer downward removes another distraction, until only the essentials remain: water, pressure, and time. Beneath that weight, life continues in perfect balance, and the planet rests in quiet motion. The deeper the descent, the greater the force pressing in from all sides. Pressure in the ocean increases by roughly 1 atmosphere for every 10 meters of depth. At 1,000 meters, it reaches 100 times the pressure at sea level, at the bottom of the deepest trench, over 1,000 times. This is the central challenge of the deep sea. It is not darkness or cold that defines the abyss, but weight. Water is almost incompressible, so every additional meter adds an unrelenting burden. Human lungs would collapse within a few dozen meters without protection, and even solid metal begins to deform beyond a few kilometers. Yet, under these immense forces, life endures. Deep-sea organisms avoid air-filled cavities. Instead of rigid skeletons, they rely on soft tissues and flexible proteins. Their enzymes are stabilized by pressure-resistant molecules known as piezolites, which prevent folding errors that would otherwise stop metabolism. Through adaptation, the biological machinery of life rewrites its own limits. The absence of light adds another layer of difficulty. Sunlight fades quickly in water because its energy is absorbed by particles and dissolved molecules. Red wavelengths vanish first, followed by yellow and green. Only a faint blue penetrates beyond 200 meters, and soon even that disappears. What remains is not total darkness, but a diffuse, scattered glow from occasional bioluminescent flashes. In this world, vision becomes rare, replaced by sensitivity to movement, vibration, and pressure changes. Scientists studying these depths use equipment designed to resist crushing forces. Submersibles such as Trieste and modern remotely operated vehicles are built from titanium spheres that distribute pressure evenly. Cameras and sensors are encased in oil or specialized synthetics that prevent collapse. Each descent is an engineering test against physics itself. The success of these designs reveals the same principle that governs the creatures below. Survival depends not on resisting pressure but on adapting to it. Light's disappearance has profound consequences. Without photosynthesis, energy must come from other sources. Chemical reactions near hydrothermal vents and cold seeps release compounds like hydrogen sulfide and methane. Microbes use these chemicals as fuel, forming the base of complex ecosystems. In complete darkness, chemistry replaces sunlight as the foundation of life. The deep ocean is therefore not empty but self-sufficient, driven by invisible exchanges of energy between rock, water, and organism. Pressure also alters sound. In the deep ocean, sound waves travel faster and farther than near the surface, because the water is denser and more uniform in temperature. Whales, submarines, and research equipment all depend on this property to communicate or navigate. The SOFAR channel, a stable horizontal layer between 600 and 1200 meters, acts as a natural waveguide, carrying low-frequency sounds across entire ocean basins. Through it, the sea possesses a kind of hearing, an acoustic link binding distant worlds. The interplay of weight and silence creates an environment unlike any other on Earth. Movement is slow, metabolism efficient, and time appears to stretch. Even at these depths, the ocean remains in motion. Currents glide through canyons, and tiny particles fall through the dark like snow. It is a world stripped to essentials, where form follows necessity and beauty hides in precision. When scientists speak of pressure, they are also describing stability. The immense force that could crush unprepared life also shields it from change. Storms above cannot disturb the Hadal plains. Sunlight, temperature, and wind never reach this far. The deep ocean is, paradoxically, both extreme and constant. It preserves chemical signatures, sediments, and species in near-perfect stillness, allowing researchers to read the planet's past as if turning the pages of a slow, enduring record. In this balance of gravity and life, the laws of physics and biology converge. Weight becomes structure, darkness becomes habitat, and silence becomes communication. The ocean's depths are not lifeless voids, but examples of adaptation at its purest. Where pressure is greatest, resilience is strongest. Temperature controls motion, chemistry, and life throughout the ocean. The sea may appear uniform from above, but its thermal structure is complex and finely layered. Near the surface, sunlight warms the upper few hundred meters, creating a region of seasonal change where heat is exchanged with the atmosphere. Below that, the water cools abruptly through the thermocline, a boundary that separates warm surface water from the cold, dense depths beneath. At depths beyond 1,000 meters, temperature becomes remarkably stable, usually between 1 and 4 degrees Celsius everywhere on the planet. This constancy results from the slow circulation of cold, oxygen-rich water that sinks in the polar regions and drifts through the global conveyor belt. The process, called thermohaline circulation, is driven by differences in temperature and salinity. Cold, salty water is heavier, so it sinks, while warmer, fresher water rises. Together they form a continuous loop that redistributes energy and maintains climate balance. Thermal energy also moves through smaller, localized systems. Near mid-ocean ridges, seawater seeps into cracks in the crust, heats up from underlying magma, and then re-emerges as hydrothermal vents. These jets can reach temperatures above 300 degrees Celsius, yet the surrounding water remains close to freezing. The rapid mixing of hot and cold creates steep gradients that power chemical reactions and sustain ecosystems entirely independent of sunlight. Chemosynthetic bacteria convert hydrogen sulfide into organic matter, providing food for dense communities of tube worms, crabs, and shrimp. In these places, geology and biology intertwine, showing how heat from the planet's interior becomes energy for life. Elsewhere, temperature differences drive vast current systems. The Gulf Stream in the Atlantic and the Kuroshio Current in the Pacific transport warm water toward the poles, influencing weather thousands of kilometers away. When these patterns shift, they alter rainfall, storm frequency, and even fisheries. The El Niño and La Niña cycles are examples of how small changes in ocean temperature can echo through the atmosphere, reminding us that climate is a coupled system, air and sea moving as one. In the deep ocean, where sunlight never reaches, temperature shapes the speed of metabolism. Chemical reactions slow in cold environments, allowing organisms to conserve energy and live longer. Some deep-sea species grow at rates measured in millimeters per year and may live for centuries. Others depend on microcurrents of slightly warmer water rising from volcanic activity. For them, a difference of only 1 degree can mark the boundary between survival and dormancy. Scientists measure these variations using CTD instruments, devices that record conductivity, temperature, and depth. Thousands of autonomous floats, known as the Argo network, now drift through the world's oceans, surfacing periodically to transmit temperature profiles via satellite. The data they provide help researchers model heat storage and predict climate trends with increasing precision. Each reading is a small piece of evidence in a global puzzle, where the ocean stores its warmth, how quickly it releases it, and how these exchanges regulate the planet's heartbeat. Thermal structure also influences the sound environment. In warmer, less dense water near the surface, sound refracts upward. In colder, denser layers below, it bends downward. The result is a curved path that allows acoustic signals to travel far greater distances. Submarines and marine mammals both rely on these predictable temperature layers to send messages across vast ranges. Through all these mechanisms, the ocean acts as Earth's greatest thermal buffer. It absorbs more than 90% of the excess heat generated by greenhouse gases, preventing rapid atmospheric warming. Without this capacity, climate change would proceed far faster. The sea's slow circulation distributes that heat evenly, moderating extremes and keeping global conditions within the narrow range that life requires. Temperature is often described as a measure of motion, the vibration of molecules. In the ocean, those vibrations form an immense, silent orchestra, conducting energy from equator to pole, from surface to trench. Every degree represents both movement and balance. Beneath the calm surface, the planet's thermal heartbeat continues, steady and ancient, linking every current, cloud, and creature in a single continuous flow. In the absence of sunlight, the chemistry of the deep sea becomes the main driver of life. Every reaction, every ion exchange, and every trace molecule determines whether an organism can survive in this cold, high-pressure world. What begins as geology, minerals leaching from rock, ends as biology, energy captured, transformed, and passed through living networks that exist far beyond the reach of photosynthesis. The deep ocean contains a vast mixture of dissolved gases and ions. Sodium and chloride dominate, giving seawater its salinity, but dozens of other elements, magnesium, sulfate, calcium, potassium, exist in steady ratios that have changed little for millions of years. This stability is maintained by a constant cycle of addition and removal. Rivers bring minerals in, hydrothermal vents and biological activity remove them again. The balance of these processes keeps ocean chemistry remarkably consistent, allowing life to adapt to reliable conditions even as surface environments fluctuate. Oxygen, though limited in deeper waters, reaches the abyss through the slow sinking of cold, dense currents from polar seas. In some regions, these flows create oxygen minimum zones, where consumption by bacteria outpaces supply. Yet even there, microorganisms persist by using alternative chemical pathways, reducing nitrate, manganese, or sulfur compounds instead of oxygen. This flexibility shows how evolution finds energy wherever physical law allows it. At hydrothermal vents, water heated by magma reacts with minerals in Earth's crust, emerging rich in hydrogen sulfide, methane, and metal ions. When this fluid meets cold seawater, it precipitates black mineral clouds and fuels a unique community of organisms. Chemosynthetic bacteria living there use the energy stored in chemical bonds to fix carbon dioxide into organic matter. The reaction, oxidation of hydrogen sulfide into sulfate, releases enough energy to sustain dense colonies of worms, mussels, and crustaceans. These ecosystems exist entirely without sunlight. Their foundation is chemistry itself. Elsewhere, on the abyssal plains, life depends on the slow rain of organic particles from above. As plankton die and sink, bacteria decompose them, releasing nutrients and gases back into the water. This biological pump links the surface and the deep, storing carbon for centuries within sediments. When tectonic movement later lifts those sediments, the trapped carbon re-enters the atmosphere through weathering and volcanic outgassing, closing a cycle that spans geological time. Acidity also plays a central role. The average pH of seawater near the surface is about 8.1, slightly basic, but in the deep it can drop below 7.7. Carbon dioxide dissolves under pressure to form carbonic acid, influencing how minerals such as calcium carbonate dissolve or precipitate. This chemistry affects shell-forming organisms and determines the stability of sediments. The carbonate compensation depth, usually around 4 to 5 kilometers, marks the point where calcium carbonate dissolves faster than it accumulates. Below this invisible line, shells vanish, and the seafloor becomes a record of chemical equilibrium rather than biological debris. Trace elements like iron, zinc, and copper exist in concentrations measured in billionths of a gram per liter, yet they regulate entire ecosystems. Many deep-sea microbes rely on metal ions as catalysts for enzymatic reactions. When vents or seafloor dust release these elements, they spread through currents, subtly changing productivity thousands of kilometers away. Even the faintest chemical signal can ripple through the planet's life support system. Studying these processes requires precision instruments capable of sampling without contamination. Deep-sea rovers carry titanium syringes and in-situ spectrometers that analyze fluids under pressure, preserving their chemical structure. The resulting data help scientists understand not only Earth's internal chemistry, but also the potential for life on other ocean worlds, such as the subsurface seas of Europa and Enceladus. The same reactions that sustain vent ecosystems here could, in theory, occur there. Viewed as a whole, the deep ocean is a vast chemical reactor operating on planetary scale. Energy flows from minerals to microbes, from gases to living tissue, from decay back to rock. Each reaction follows the same physical laws that govern stars and atmospheres, but in a slower, quieter form. In that stillness, matter transforms without haste, and the boundaries between rock and life blur until they are indistinguishable. The chemistry of the deep is not chaos, it is equilibrium maintained through constant, silent exchange. The farther we descend, the slower the ocean seems to move. At several thousand meters, water is cold, dense, and almost perfectly still. Here, the physics of motion changes. Currents weaken because friction against the seafloor and the uniform density of the surrounding water reduce turbulence. The result is a world governed by equilibrium rather than speed. To most sensors, the abyss appears silent, but it is full of subtle vibrations. Low-frequency hums from distant earthquakes, the soft hiss of sediment falling, and the rhythmic pulse of internal tides that travel unseen through the dark. In these depths, biological activity continues at an unhurried pace. Many organisms lower their metabolism to conserve energy, drifting between moments of movement and long intervals of stillness. Fish may hover motionless for hours, their muscles adapted to the slow diffusion of oxygen in cold water. Bacteria process organic matter grain by grain, converting it into forms that feed other species. Each exchange occurs thousands of times slower than in the sunlit ocean, yet the outcome is the same: energy transferred, life sustained. The abyss teaches that endurance is not the absence of motion but the mastery of it. Pressure and temperature shape every aspect of this calm domain. The crushing weight compresses cell membranes and stabilizes them, while the cold slows chemical reactions. Together they create a natural refrigeration system that preserves organic material for centuries. Layers of sediment accumulate like pages in a history book, recording changes in climate, volcanic activity, and even meteor impacts. When researchers extract long cylinders of this mud, called sediment cores, they can read patterns of Earth's past, much as tree rings record seasons. Hydrothermal vents punctuate this quiet landscape with bursts of energy, but most of the seafloor exists in darkness and balance. Minerals precipitate from seawater, forming metallic nodules that grow millimeter by millimeter over millions of years. Calcium carbonate slowly dissolves, silica settles, and clay accumulates. The chemistry is stable because time moves differently here. Processes that seem static to us are simply operating on geological scales. For the creatures that inhabit this world, stillness is survival. The tripod fish waits motionless with fins planted in the sediment, sensing faint movements of prey. Sea cucumbers graze methodically, recycling the surface layer of the seafloor and aerating it in the process. Tiny amphipods crawl through grains of sand, feeding on microbial films. Everything functions with minimal energy loss. The economy of motion is absolute. As we visualize this deep calm, it is easy to sense how the environment itself invites rest. The absence of light removes distraction, constant temperature erases variation, and the slow pulse of deep currents resembles breathing. Just as the ocean finds balance in density and motion, our own bodies seek equilibrium through stillness. If your thoughts drift, let them settle like particles sinking gently through water. You are not forcing rest. You are allowing it to form naturally, the way the sea builds quiet from countless steady processes. Scientists studying these depths often describe a paradox. Despite its apparent lifelessness, the abyss feels alive. Instruments record faint chemical exchanges, microbial respiration, and the whisper of slow migration through sediment. The system is self-regulating, recycling every atom of carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus with near-perfect efficiency. It is Earth's slowest yet most dependable rhythm. In a sense, the deep sea represents the planet at rest, massive, silent, and balanced. Energy still flows, but it moves in long cycles, measured not in seconds or hours, but in centuries. The surface world above may churn with weather, waves, and human motion, yet beneath it all, this steady layer keeps the planet stable. So tonight, as you listen, imagine being suspended in that gentle weight of water, safe, supported, and surrounded by calm pressure. In the deep ocean, every sound fades into resonance, every current slows to harmony, and every particle finds its place. The same balance that governs the abyss exists within you. Quiet structure, slow rhythm, enduring peace. When sunlight fades, many organisms create their own. In the deep ocean, where darkness dominates, bioluminescence becomes the most common form of visible light. It is not reflected sunlight, but a chemical reaction, life converting energy into photons. Scientists estimate that more than 3/4 of all deep-sea species can produce light in some form. This glow is not decoration, it is a vital tool for survival. At the molecular level, bioluminescence results from a reaction between two substances, luciferin, a light-emitting compound, and luciferase, the enzyme that catalyzes the process. When luciferin oxidizes, energy is released as cold light, meaning it produces almost no heat. Different species use slightly different chemicals, producing hues from green and blue to violet. Because seawater absorbs longer wavelengths like red and orange, most marine bioluminescence is blue, perfectly tuned to travel farthest through water. The functions of this glow are varied. Some fish use light to lure prey, dangling luminous organs called esca from modified spines. Others flash to startle predators or to signal their own toxicity. Squid release bright clouds to confuse attackers, while plankton emit light when disturbed, revealing the motion of larger animals through the water. The deep sea's darkness has turned light into both weapon and language. Communication through light is precise and species-specific. Certain deep-sea shrimp can adjust brightness by controlling the concentration of reactants within specialized glands. Hatchetfish carry rows of photophores along their bellies, producing a soft counter-illumination that matches the faint light filtering from above. From below, they appear invisible, blending perfectly into the dim background. This natural camouflage, known as countershading, demonstrates how evolution refines even the smallest details to match physics. Some organisms maintain partnerships that enhance their glow. The flashlight fish, for example, hosts colonies of luminescent bacteria inside small pouches near its eyes. By opening or closing flaps of skin, it can turn the light on and off, using it to find food, navigate reefs, or communicate with others. In return, the bacteria receive a stable home and nutrients. This relationship is an elegant exchange of chemistry and behavior, proof that cooperation can emerge even in the most competitive environments. In the deep pelagic zones, bioluminescence often replaces eyesight. Predators detect faint flashes rather than forms, and prey interpret brief glimmers as warning or confusion. To human observers, these lights appear random, but to animals adapted to them, they form a clear vocabulary. Short pulses may mean danger, longer ones signal proximity or readiness to mate. Submersibles equipped with low-light cameras record spectacular displays, spirals, streaks, and rippling curtains of blue drifting through black water. The study of bioluminescence extends beyond biology. Chemists analyze luciferin to understand energy transfer at the molecular scale, while engineers use its efficiency as a model for cold light technology. Biomedical research employs luciferase reactions as tracers to visualize cellular activity. Thus, the glow that once guided deep-sea creatures now illuminates the workings of human science. Despite its beauty, bioluminescence is ultimately about efficiency. It allows organisms to communicate or hunt without noise or waste, a form of signaling perfectly adapted to an environment where energy is scarce. Unlike fire, which consumes oxygen rapidly, these reactions are controlled and renewable. Each flash represents a precise balance between chemistry and need. To imagine this world is to see darkness not as emptiness but as a medium alive with quiet pulses of energy. The water column is filled with scattered points of light, tiny plankton, drifting jellyfish, and hunting fish tracing luminous arcs through the black. There are no boundaries, only layers of brightness fading and reappearing as if the ocean itself breathes light. For brief moments, an entire ecosystem becomes visible, then disappears again into shadow. The phenomenon reminds us that nature's most efficient systems are often the most understated. Light in the deep sea carries no warmth and no waste, yet it supports communication, defense, and exploration. In the balance of chemistry and adaptation, bioluminescence stands as one of evolution's most refined achievements, a living equation where matter becomes light, purpose becomes pattern, and survival glows quietly in the dark. Life in the deep ocean faces one constant defining challenge: immense pressure. Every 10 meters of depth adds roughly 1 atmosphere of weight. At 1,000 meters, the pressure equals that beneath a column of 100 elephants standing on a single square meter. At the bottom of the deepest trenches, it exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. Under such force, air pockets collapse, gas compresses into liquid, and most living structures from the surface would fail instantly. Yet the organisms of the deep sea thrive, each shaped by physics into precise forms of endurance. The most obvious adaptation is flexibility. Deep-sea animals lack the rigid structures common in land creatures. Many have gelatinous bodies with high water content, allowing external and internal pressures to equalize. Because they contain few or no air-filled cavities, they are not crushed by compression. The tissues of these animals are nearly the same density as the seawater around them, a balance that reduces stress and energy expenditure. On a molecular level, adaptations become even more remarkable. Proteins that perform essential tasks, transporting oxygen, digesting food, copying DNA, change shape under pressure. In shallow water species, such distortions can destroy function. Deep-sea organisms counteract this effect with piezolites, small organic molecules such as trimethylamine, N-oxide, TMAO, that stabilize protein structures. The deeper the habitat, the higher the concentration of these stabilizers. Studies of snailfish from the Mariana Trench show that their tissues contain far more TMAO than those of shallow relatives, an elegant chemical response tuned precisely to environmental force. Cell membranes also evolve under pressure. Lipids that would stiffen in the cold and compress under weight are replaced with unsaturated fats that remain fluid. This ensures that enzymes and transport channels continue to function, even when the surrounding water feels as dense as solid matter. Pressure-tolerant enzymes show subtle differences in amino acid composition, preventing the collapse of active sites where reactions occur. Every molecular adjustment is a negotiation with physics, a balance between structure and mobility. Bones, where present, follow the same principle. Many deep-sea fish possess lightly calcified skeletons, or none at all. Their muscles are soft, suited for slow motion rather than speed. In extreme depths, buoyancy replaces strength. Some species, like the abyssal grenadier, maintain neutral buoyancy through special compounds in their tissues that offset density. Others, like gelatinous holothurians, simply drift, their shapes molded by the slow currents of the abyss. Reproduction and metabolism adapt as well. In an environment where encounters are rare, many deep-sea species are hermaphroditic, capable of producing both eggs and sperm. Others release chemical signals that attract partners across long distances. Growth rates are slow, lifespans long, and energy use minimal. Food scarcity demands precision, nothing is wasted, and every chemical reaction serves survival. Even sensory systems reflect pressure's influence. With little light available, eyes shrink or vanish, replaced by pressure-sensitive hairs or vibration-detecting organs. Some species detect electric fields or chemical gradients instead of sight. The result is a sensory world shaped not by images, but by flow, movement, and density, a kind of awareness built entirely from touch and chemistry. Humans exploring these regions must imitate nature's adaptations through engineering. Submersibles are built from thick titanium spheres, their structure distributing pressure evenly, just as soft-bodied fish distribute it through flesh. Electronics are encased in oil-filled housings that transmit pressure rather than resist it. In both biology and technology, survival depends on the same concept: harmony with external forces instead of opposition to them. These adaptations remind us that life is not defined by resistance but by flexibility. The deep ocean is full of creatures that endure conditions no human body could tolerate, yet they do so effortlessly, their entire existence calibrated to pressure. Evolution has not hardened them, it has softened them into balance. In this way, the abyss reveals a universal rule. Endurance often takes the shape of surrender. By yielding to weight, life discovers stability. Every organism below the surface carries this principle within its cells, a quiet agreement with gravity and time, proof that even under crushing force, equilibrium is possible. In the deep ocean, light disappears within the first few hundred meters, but sound remains. It travels far, bends through layers of temperature and density, and connects parts of the sea that are otherwise invisible to each other. Where sight fails, acoustics becomes the primary language of the deep. Sound in water behaves differently than in air. Because water molecules are tightly packed, vibrations pass between them more efficiently, allowing sound to travel about 4 times faster and with far less loss of energy. Low-frequency sounds can cross entire ocean basins, while higher frequencies are quickly absorbed. The distance a sound can travel depends on temperature, salinity, and pressure, which together determine the speed of sound profile. Scientists use this profile to locate the SOFAR channel, a stable horizontal layer, usually between 600 and 1200 meters deep, where sound waves are refracted toward the center of the layer and can propagate for thousands of kilometers. Marine mammals rely on this property to communicate across vast distances. Blue whales produce low-frequency calls, some below the range of human hearing, that can travel from one side of an ocean to the other. These signals carry information about identity, location, and mating readiness. Sperm whales, by contrast, use short bursts of high-intensity clicks, each one louder than a jet engine, to navigate and hunt. The timing and pattern of these clicks create an acoustic image of the surroundings, much like sonar. Through sound, whales build a three-dimensional understanding of the dark space around them. Smaller creatures also use sound, though on a different scale. Shrimp produce rapid snaps of their claws, forming clouds of cavitation bubbles that collapse with a sharp crack. Fish communicate through drumming muscles attached to their swim bladders. Even microscopic plankton generate faint vibrations as they move. Collectively, these sounds form what oceanographers call a biophony, the living background noise of the sea. Added to that are geophony, the natural non-biological sounds such as waves, rain, and shifting sediment, and anthrophony, the noise of ships and sonar. The combination produces a constantly shifting symphony that scientists record with underwater microphones known as hydrophones. By studying these recordings, researchers can track whale migrations, locate schools of fish, and monitor seismic activity. Sound acts as both messenger and map. Sonar pulses reveal the shape of the seafloor, detecting trenches, ridges, and shipwrecks with remarkable precision. Passive listening devices detect the hum of underwater volcanoes or the creak of icebergs carving far away. The ocean, though dark, is never truly silent. It hums with data for those who know how to hear it. For marine life, communication through sound offers distinct advantages. Acoustic signals require little energy, travel long distances, and remain reliable even in turbid water. Many species have evolved finely tuned hearing organs that can detect minute changes in frequency or timing. Dolphins, for example, interpret returning echoes to recognize objects as small as a golf ball. Some species coordinate group behavior through patterned calls, forming dynamic social networks maintained entirely through sound. Yet human activity increasingly interferes with this natural communication. Engine noise, military sonar, and industrial drilling add low-frequency vibrations that overlap with biological ranges. Studies show that whales may alter migration routes or reduce feeding when noise levels rise, and fish can lose contact with their shoals. The ocean's clarity of communication, perfected over millions of years, is now blurred by constant mechanical hum. Efforts to reduce this impact focus on quieter ship designs, speed limits in migration corridors, and the development of low-impact sonar. Monitoring programs use arrays of hydrophones to identify critical habitats and measure how noise affects marine populations. Understanding the acoustic environment is essential for conservation. In the deep sea, listening is as important as seeing. If one imagines the ocean as a great body of resonance, each sound becomes a thread in its structure. Whales, storms, and tectonic rumbles all share the same physical medium, bound by density and vibration. Through these exchanges, the sea conducts an unending dialogue between its living and geological parts. Sound is not an interruption in the deep, it is its heartbeat, the measure of movement in a place where nothing else travels so freely. Stretching thousands of kilometers across the seafloor, The abyssal plains form the largest and flattest regions on Earth. They lie between 3 and 6 kilometers deep, below the reach of sunlight and most surface currents. Though they seem featureless from above, these plains cover more than half of the planet's solid surface. They are Earth's quietest landscapes, vast, stable, and shaped by processes measured in millennia. The environment here is remarkably uniform. Temperatures hover near 2 degrees Celsius, pressure exceeds 500 atmospheres, and light never penetrates. The terrain consists of fine particles that have drifted downward for millions of years, forming layers of sediment tens of meters thick. This material, known as marine snow, is composed of the remains of plankton, tiny shells, and organic debris that slowly descend from the surface. Each flake is small, but together they form a continuous rain that sustains life in the dark. Despite the apparent emptiness, the abyssal plains support a wide array of organisms. Microbes dominate, forming thin biofilms on sediment grains and decomposing organic matter at astonishingly slow rates. Larger inhabitants include sea cucumbers, brittle stars, polychaete worms, and small crustaceans. These creatures crawl or drift across the seafloor, feeding on detritus and redistributing nutrients. Because food arrives unpredictably, many animals have evolved flexible diets and slow metabolisms. They wait patiently for opportunity, a whale carcass, a fallen tree, or the steady trickle of snow from above. Some species specialize in exploiting sudden abundance. When a large object sinks, known as a whale fall, it transforms the surrounding seafloor into a temporary oasis. Scavengers arrive first: hagfish, amphipods, and sleeper sharks, tearing tissue apart. Then bacteria and worms colonize the bones, breaking down fats and releasing hydrogen sulfide that feeds chemosynthetic microbes. Over years, the carcass becomes an island of life, before eventually dissolving back into sediment. Such events remind scientists that even in the most uniform environment, pockets of energy create bursts of diversity. Mineral nodules also populate these plains. Formed from metals like manganese, nickel, and cobalt, they grow around tiny nuclei, shark teeth, shells, or rock fragments, at rates of a few millimeters per million years. These nodules provide rare hard surfaces in a world of soft mud, allowing sponges and corals to anchor themselves. Because of their mineral value, they have become targets for potential deep-sea mining, raising concerns about the fragility of these ecosystems. Disturbing the sediment could release stored carbon and destroy habitats that have taken centuries to form. To study these regions, scientists use remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, and autonomous platforms equipped with cameras and sensors. Each expedition reveals scenes of quiet order: starfish leaving delicate trails in the dust, translucent holothurians gliding across the bottom, and faint plumes rising where creatures sift the surface. Samples brought back show that microbial activity continues even within the deepest layers of sediment, consuming oxygen and recycling nutrients through anaerobic reactions. This invisible community sustains the visible one above it. The abyssal plains also act as a carbon sink, capturing organic carbon that escapes decomposition. Over time, this buried carbon helps regulate Earth's climate by preventing its return to the atmosphere. Sediment cores extracted from these depths provide scientists with a detailed record of environmental history, dust from continents, volcanic ash, and chemical markers of ancient temperatures, all preserved in chronological order. Reading these cores is like tracing the heartbeat of the planet through layers of quiet data. Biologists sometimes describe the abyssal plains as a paradox, both monotonous and dynamic. Conditions remain stable for millions of years, yet every square meter hosts slow but continuous change. Creatures burrow, feed, and die, Particles settle and are lifted again by currents too gentle to feel. The plane seems lifeless only because its motion is too gradual for human time. To picture this environment is to imagine a sea floor stretching beyond sight, its surface soft and undisturbed, its inhabitants patient and efficient. Nothing hurries, every action has purpose, and every particle finds use. Beneath the restless surface world, the abyssal planes embody a deeper rhythm, the quiet persistence of life adapting perfectly to pressure, scarcity, and time itself. Along the boundaries where tectonic plates diverge, the seafloor opens in long fractures that expose the planet's interior heat. Here, seawater seeps down through cracks, reacts with hot rock, and re-emerges as jets of mineral-rich fluid. These are hydrothermal vents, natural chimneys that release chemical energy into the cold abyss. They transform stretches of bare crust into dense oases of life, proving that biology can thrive without sunlight. When seawater descends into the crust, it encounters magma-heated rock and reaches temperatures above 300 degrees Celsius. Under immense pressure, it does not boil. Instead, it dissolves metals and sulfides from the surrounding rock. When that fluid escapes back into near-freezing seawater, the sudden cooling forces the minerals to precipitate, creating tall, smoke-like plumes. Depending on composition, these vents appear as black smokers, rich in iron and sulfur, or white smokers containing barium, calcium, and silica. The resulting chimneys can rise more than 20 meters high, growing as minerals accumulate. Chemically, these environments are driven by oxidation-reduction reactions. Hydrogen sulfide, released from the vents, reacts with oxygen in seawater, producing sulfate and releasing energy. Specialized bacteria use that energy to fix carbon dioxide into organic compounds, a process known as chemosynthesis. It mirrors photosynthesis in structure, but replaces light with chemistry as the energy source. The bacteria form the base of a complex food web that supports tube worms, clams, crabs, and fish. One of the best-known inhabitants is the giant tube worm Riftia pachyptela. It has no mouth or digestive tract. Instead, it houses billions of symbiotic bacteria inside a special organ called the trophosome. The worm supplies its partners with hydrogen sulfide and oxygen through its blood, and in return the bacteria provide organic nutrients. This partnership is so efficient that colonies of worms can grow several meters tall, forming bright red fields that surround the vents. Their crimson color comes from hemoglobin adapted to bind both oxygen and sulfide simultaneously, an adaptation unique to this extreme environment. Nearby species display similar alliances. Mussels host sulfur-oxidizing bacteria in their gills. Shrimp rely on microbes that coat their exoskeletons. Every creature contributes to recycling elements. Bacteria transform sulfide into sulfate. Animals graze on bacterial mats, and predators feed on grazers. The result is a balanced ecosystem fueled entirely by chemistry emerging from the Earth's crust. Scientists first discovered these vents in the late 1970s using the submersible Alvin near the Galapagos Rift. The discovery astonished biologists who had assumed life could not exist without sunlight. Since then, hundreds of vent fields have been mapped along mid-ocean ridges and back-arc basins worldwide. Each has its own chemical fingerprint, determined by the composition of the underlying rock and the temperature of the fluids. Hydrothermal systems also influence the planet on a larger scale. They regulate the chemistry of seawater by removing magnesium and adding metals such as iron and manganese. They provide nutrients that eventually disperse through currents, enriching distant ecosystems. On geological timescales, vents help cool Earth's interior by releasing heat and drive the formation of new oceanic crust. Because vent environments are transient, lasting from decades to centuries, Species must disperse when conditions change. Larvae carried by deep currents locate new vents using chemical cues, ensuring continuity across the ocean. Genetic studies show surprising connectivity between populations thousands of kilometers apart, suggesting that the deep sea is less isolated than once thought. Astrobiologists study these systems as analogues for extraterrestrial life. Moons like Europa and Enceladus likely possess oceans beneath their icy shells, heated by tidal flexing rather than magma. If life exists there, it may rely on the same principle: chemosynthesis driven by interaction between rock and water. Thus, every plume rising from an earthly vent is also a window into what might exist beyond our planet. Viewed from a distance, a vent field glows faintly in camera lights, black columns breathing mineral clouds into the still water. Around them, organisms cluster in living rings, transforming the darkness into a vibrant tapestry of motion and chemistry. It is life written in the language of geology, proof that the planet's deep engine and its biosphere share the same pulse. Beyond 3,000 meters, the last traces of surface light vanish. The sea becomes a continuous shadow, illuminated only by the occasional flash of bioluminescence or the dull reflection of submersible lights. Descending through these depths feels like moving through layers of time, each meter an archive of conditions that have shaped the planet since its earliest days. Here, the physics of the ocean becomes almost perfect. Pressure stabilizes density, temperature levels out, and the water's motion slows to a steady whisper. At this point, human exploration depends entirely on engineering. Submersibles sink at a controlled rate, their steel or titanium hulls balancing weight and buoyancy with precision. External lights reveal clouds of particles suspended like dust in air. These particles, plankton remains, volcanic ash, and minerals, are what oceanographers call marine snow. It drifts endlessly downward, feeding organisms and storing carbon. Sensors measure its density to estimate how much carbon the ocean removes from the atmosphere. This slow rain connects surface and abyss in a global exchange that regulates climate and sustains life. Within this still environment, sound becomes the main clue to motion. Instruments detect faint rumbles from underwater earthquakes, the pulse of internal tides, and distant echoes of whale calls that can travel for thousands of kilometers through the SOFAR channel. These vibrations reveal that even in complete darkness, the ocean remains dynamic. The planet never truly rests, it simply moves in longer, slower rhythms. The deep ocean also acts as a long-term storage system for heat and gas. Water that sinks in polar regions may take centuries to return to the surface. During that time, it carries dissolved oxygen and nutrients, circulating them across the globe. This movement, known as the global conveyor belt, is a stabilizing mechanism that prevents rapid climate change. By transferring heat between hemispheres, it smooths the planet's seasonal extremes and keeps temperatures within a narrow range that supports life. Biologists studying these depths often note how organisms appear calm rather than fragile. Fish swim slowly, conserving energy. Gelatinous creatures drift, letting currents carry them. Every motion is measured and efficient. At these depths, where food is scarce and distance is vast, waste is impossible. Evolution has refined every cell for endurance rather than speed. When viewed through scientific instruments, this world looks peaceful but never empty. Microscopic life forms inhabit every cubic centimeter of water, metabolizing chemical traces, recycling matter, and keeping the deep ocean chemically active. Even without sunlight, biological processes continue at scales invisible to the eye. The abyss is not asleep, it is steady, organized, and alive. And yet, there is something about this constancy that mirrors rest. The absence of light, the stable pressure, and the slow movement create conditions similar to stillness. For the human mind, imagining such uniform calm evokes the same physiological response as drifting towards sleep. The body recognizes patterns of equilibrium and begins to match them. If your breathing slows while listening, that is simply resonance, the quiet rhythm of your own system aligning with the ocean's. The comparison is not metaphorical alone, it is physiological. Studies show that the human heartbeat and respiration tend to synchronize with low-frequency sounds, resembling deep ocean noise. Recordings of underwater currents and distant whale songs are sometimes used in relaxation therapy for this reason. The ocean's steady acoustic field, neither loud nor silent, echoes the balance between awareness and rest. So as we descend deeper, imagine the submersible leveling out in calm equilibrium. The walls creak faintly, the instruments hum, and the outside water presses evenly from all sides. In this stillness, time slows to the rhythm of chemistry and gravity. Each layer below brings more stability, fewer fluctuations, less noise. It is not sleep as absence, but as perfect balance, a state where motion continues but without disturbance. In that sense, to rest is to share in the same principle that governs the ocean, to find order in pressure and peace in persistence. As the submersible drifts at depth, surrounded by vast uniform water, the mind can do the same. Let thought settle, let the body equalize with calm weight. Just as the sea holds its equilibrium through pressure and time, you hold yours through breath and stillness. Far beneath the ocean's surface, the planet is constantly reshaping itself. What seems like a still landscape in the deep is actually a network of moving plates, slow but relentless. The seafloor is part of a dynamic crust divided into immense sections that glide on molten rock below. This continuous motion, plate tectonics, is the mechanism through which the ocean floor is created, destroyed, and renewed. At the boundaries where plates separate, mid-ocean ridges rise from the abyss. These ridges form the longest mountain chains on Earth, stretching more than 60,000 kilometers through every ocean basin. Here, magma from the mantle wells upward through fissures, cools, and solidifies into new crust. The process is called seafloor spreading. As magma cools, it records the direction of Earth's magnetic field in its minerals, producing symmetrical magnetic stripes on either side of the ridge. These stripes provide strong evidence for the continual movement of plates and for the renewal of the ocean floor. Where plates converge, the story reverses. One plate is forced beneath another in regions known as subduction zones. The descending slab sinks into the mantle, melts, and releases gases that rise to form deep-sea volcanoes and island arcs. The Mariana Trench, for example, marks a boundary where the Pacific Plate bends beneath the smaller Philippine Plate. This process recycles crustal material, closing the loop begun at mid-ocean ridges. Over millions of years, entire ocean basins are born and destroyed through this exchange. Deep-sea volcanoes often occur near these tectonic boundaries. When they erupt, molten lava meets cold seawater, cooling rapidly to create bulb-shaped structures called pillow basalts. Each pillow forms as lava extrudes, chills, cracks, and flows again, stacking into massive fields that cover much of the seafloor. Chemical reactions between hot lava and seawater release minerals that enrich the surrounding water with iron, manganese, and silica, nutrients that feed microbial communities and, over time, influence global ocean chemistry. Submarine eruptions differ from those on land. High pressure prevents explosive degassing, so the flow is quiet, often invisible to surface observers. Yet, instruments detect their signals. Small tremors, temperature spikes, and changes in water composition. The eruptions release heat that drives hydrothermal circulation, producing vent systems like those described earlier. In this way, geology and biology remain tightly linked. Volcanic activity fuels ecosystems, and ecosystems alter the chemistry of new rock. Researchers study these events using autonomous vehicles equipped with seismometers, temperature sensors, and cameras capable of withstanding crushing pressure. By mapping the ridges and monitoring seismic patterns, scientists can predict where new crust will form and how fast plates move, typically a few centimeters per year. Over geological time, these small increments reshape continents, open new oceans, and close ancient ones. Volcanic gases released underwater also contribute to the ocean's chemical balance. Carbon dioxide, hydrogen, and methane dissolve into surrounding water, participating in global cycles of carbon and energy. While most of this gas is absorbed or precipitated locally, a small fraction enters the atmosphere, linking the deep ocean's hidden activity with the air we breathe. Even climate patterns far above depend, in part, on reactions occurring kilometers below. The aesthetic calm of the abyss hides enormous forces. Beneath the sediment plains lie magma chambers, fault lines, and conduits that pulse with energy. These structures expand and contract as the crust stretches, like the slow breathing of the planet itself. When viewed over millions of years, the deep ocean is not static, it is alive with tectonic rhythm. For all its power, this process also creates balance. Heat rising from the mantle escapes through ridges, preventing internal buildup that could destabilize the crust. Subduction, meanwhile, recycles elements and maintains Earth's long-term equilibrium. The planet's stability depends on these opposing movements, creation and consumption, ascent and descent, occurring in silent synchronization. Imagining this interplay invites a sense of perspective. Every grain of sand on a beach, every mountain, every island traces its origin to these hidden factories of rock beneath the sea. The steady migration of plates, though invisible to human timescales, shapes coastlines, drives earthquakes, and sustains the magnetic shield that protects life from cosmic radiation. In the darkness below, Earth renews itself continuously, proving that even apparent stillness hides immense creation. In certain parts of the seafloor, life depends not on heat, but on cold chemistry. Along continental margins and deep basins, cracks in the crust allow hydrocarbons to leak slowly into the water. These regions are called cold seeps, zones where methane and other gases seep through sediments, creating ecosystems that mirror the energy cycles of hydrothermal vents, but operate at far lower temperatures. Instead of volcanic heat, the fuel here is buried carbon. The origin of seep fluids lies in decomposition. When organic material sinks and is buried, bacteria convert it under pressure into methane and other hydrocarbons. Over centuries, these gases migrate upward through porous rock until they escape into seawater. As they rise, they mix with sulfates and metals, generating a unique chemical environment that sustains entire communities of organisms. The reactions are slow, but they never stop. At first glance, a cold seep looks unremarkable. Gentle mounds of sediment, scattered shells, and shimmering water caused by differences in density. Yet beneath the surface, chemistry transforms everything. Methane that diffuses into seawater would normally escape into the atmosphere, but microbes intercept it, using it as food. These methanotrophic bacteria oxidize methane, producing carbon dioxide and energy. The process is part of the global carbon cycle, preventing vast amounts of greenhouse gas from reaching the air. Like hydrothermal vents, cold seeps host symbiotic relationships. Tube worms grow in clusters, some more than a meter long, drawing sulfides and methane from the sediment through root-like extensions. Inside their bodies live bacteria that convert these compounds into nutrients. Clams and mussels form similar alliances, their gills filled with microbial partners. Around them, crabs, snails, and fish graze on the bacterial mats that blanket the seabed. Each species occupies a niche defined by chemical gradients, zones of transition where oxygen, sulfide, and methane meet. Geologically, cold seeps mark places of slow but constant flux. Some form above fault lines, others appear where gas hydrates, crystals of methane trapped in ice, become unstable and release their contents. These hydrates are widespread, storing more carbon than all known fossil fuel reserves combined. Their decomposition, triggered by warming waters or pressure changes, can alter seafloor stability and even influence climate. Scientists study them closely, both for potential energy extraction and for understanding their role in ancient climate events. Instruments deployed at seep sites measure gas flow, temperature, and chemical composition. ROVs collect cores of sediment to analyze isotopic ratios that reveal how long the seep has been active. Some are short-lived, lasting decades. Others persist for tens of thousands of years, slowly shifting as new fractures open. The microbial communities follow these changes with remarkable adaptability, migrating as their chemical foundations move. The minerals formed at seeps also record history. When methane combines with calcium from seawater, it precipitates as orthogenic carbonate, forming mounds and crusts that harden the surrounding sediments. These structures become habitats for corals and sponges, adding texture to otherwise soft plains. Fossilized seeps preserved in ancient rocks show that similar processes have occurred for hundreds of millions of years, linking modern oceans with Earth's earliest biogeochemical systems. Compared with hydrothermal vents, cold seeps are quieter and steadier. Their energy source seeps upward rather than erupting, and their light comes from bioluminescent organisms rather than molten glow. Yet they demonstrate the same principle. Life can emerge wherever there is a flow of energy, no matter its form, whether heat or chemical potential. The result is structure, metabolism, and persistence. Viewed through the lens of chemistry, these seeps are the ocean's gentle exhalations, slow breaths releasing stored carbon while giving rise to new life. They remind scientists that the deep sea is not isolated, but integrated into planetary balance. Each molecule rising from the sediment is part of a circuit that links geology, biology, and atmosphere. Imagine this world in silence. Faint bubbles rising from the mud, translucent worms swaying in unseen currents, and microbes weaving invisible networks of exchange. It is a calm, enduring metabolism that connects rock, water, and life, a reminder that even the planet's coldest places are sustained by motion too subtle for the eye, but vital to the Earth's rhythm. For centuries, the deep ocean existed almost entirely in imagination. Sailors spoke of it as a realm of monsters or silence because no human had ever seen below its uppermost layers. The invention of modern technology changed that. What was once unreachable became observable, measured, and mapped with precision. Each breakthrough, each new tool, extended the human eye further into darkness, turning myth into data. The first glimpses of the deep came from simple equipment. In the 19th century, weighted lines and dredges retrieved sediments and organisms from the seafloor. Those crude methods hinted at the ocean's depth and diversity but offered no images, only fragments. The next revolution came with the development of sonar during the 20th century. By emitting sound waves and measuring their echoes, scientists could calculate distance to the seafloor, revealing vast ridges and trenches hidden beneath the waves. This acoustic mapping uncovered the true scale of Earth's underwater topography and provided key evidence for plate tectonics. Today, exploration relies on fleets of specialized machines. Remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, and autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, descend kilometers below the surface, guided by fiber optic cables or pre-programmed navigation. ROVs carry high-definition cameras, manipulator arms, and chemical sensors that collect samples with remarkable delicacy. They allow scientists to study fragile organisms, vent fluids, and geological structures without damaging them. AUVs, meanwhile, operate independently, scanning the seafloor with sonar and laser systems to produce detailed three-dimensional maps. The engineering behind these machines is a study in adaptation. Pressure at the deepest trenches can exceed 1,000 atmospheres, conditions that would crush most materials. To survive, equipment is constructed from titanium, syntactic foam, and specially designed ceramics that maintain structural integrity. Electronics are enclosed in oil-filled housings that equalize pressure, and communication systems use low-frequency acoustics to send data through dense water. Every mission below 5,000 meters is a balance between physics and design. The bathyscaphe Trieste achieved the first manned descent to the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench in the late 1950s. Its crew sphere, made of thick steel, carried two explorers nearly 11 kilometers down, where they observed the seafloor directly for the first time. Later, submersibles like Alvin, Mir, and Shinkai, 6,500, continued the legacy, documenting volcanic ridges, hydrothermal vents, and new species. These vessels demonstrated that human presence, though limited, remains valuable for interpreting what cameras cannot: color gradients, textures, and subtle movements of living creatures. Modern research increasingly combines robotics with artificial intelligence. Machine learning algorithms analyze video streams, identify species automatically, and detect geological formations in real time. Some AUVs adjust their course autonomously based on sensor readings, targeting anomalies such as temperature spikes or unusual chemistry. This adaptive exploration reduces human intervention and allows missions to cover vast areas efficiently. Communication between surface and depth remains one of the greatest challenges. Radio waves cannot penetrate seawater effectively, so submersibles rely on acoustic modems or fiber cables. Data transmission is slow and sometimes delayed by seconds. For real-time control, operators must anticipate movement, issuing commands before results are visible. Despite these limits, advances in robotics and computing have made the deep sea one of the most precisely studied environments on Earth. Exploration also includes mapping by satellite altimetry, which measures minute changes in sea surface height caused by gravity variations from seafloor features. Though indirect, this method has mapped nearly the entire ocean floor at low resolution, providing context for targeted dives. As technology improves, scientists aim to create a complete, high-definition map of the seabed, a goal comparable in ambition to mapping the surface of Mars. With every mission, data accumulates: temperature gradients, chemical concentrations, biological inventories, and digital terrain models. These records allow long-term comparisons, revealing how the deep ocean changes over decades. They also guide conservation, helping identify fragile ecosystems before industrial activity reaches them. Yet for all its sophistication, exploration still requires humility. Machines extend perception but not understanding by themselves. Interpretation depends on patience, curiosity, and respect for what remains unknown. The deeper we look, the more complex the ocean appears, a reminder that technology is not an end but a lens. It reveals a world that functions with precision beyond human design, a system so vast that even the most advanced instruments measure only fragments. In that truth lies the wonder of deep-sea exploration, that each new image, each sound, each chemical trace adds not certainty but deeper questions. Technology allows us to approach the unknown, but it is curiosity, the oldest human instrument, that drives us to keep descending. Among the quiet landscapes of the deep, some of the most remarkable inhabitants are also the slowest to grow. Deep-sea corals, sponges, and other long-lived organisms form vast structures on the ocean floor, delicate frameworks that can persist for centuries or even millennia. They are often called the engineers of the deep, shaping habitats for countless species, yet they exist in constant balance with fragility. Unlike their shallow water relatives, deep-sea corals do not depend on sunlight. They live far below the photic zone, feeding on organic matter that drifts down from above. The most common builders are cold water corals such as Lophelia pertusa and Desmophyllum dianthus. These species secrete calcium carbonate skeletons, forming branching colonies that can grow several meters tall. Over time, dead skeletons provide a foundation for new generations, building reef structures that rival tropical coral reefs in complexity. These reefs anchor themselves to hard surfaces like rocks, exposed bedrock, or even shipwrecks. Around them gather a diversity of life. Brittle stars weave through coral branches, fish shelter from currents, and crustaceans forage among the crevices. The reef functions as both fortress and nursery, providing stability in an otherwise shifting seafloor. Surveys using remotely operated vehicles have revealed entire coral gardens stretching for kilometers along continental slopes, their white and pink skeletons glowing faintly in artificial light. Deep-sea sponges form similar habitats, though their architecture is entirely different. Made of silica rather than calcium carbonate, they filter enormous volumes of water to extract microscopic food. Some glass sponges can live for over 10,000 years, making them among the oldest known animals on Earth. They build intricate lattice-like skeletons that serve as homes for shrimp, worms, and small fish. Each sponge, though stationary, influences its surroundings by cycling nutrients and stabilizing sediments. The endurance of these organisms is tied to their environment. Growth is slow because energy is scarce. Corals may extend less than a centimeter per year. Sponges may take centuries to mature. This slow pace gives the deep ocean its remarkable stability but also makes it vulnerable to disturbance. A single trawl or mining operation can destroy formations that took millennia to develop. Recovery, if it occurs, happens on timescales far beyond human planning. Scientific research into these fragile giants has advanced rapidly. Genetic studies reveal that some coral colonies, once thought to be individual organisms, are ancient clones, living networks that have continuously regenerated for thousands of years. Radiocarbon dating of coral skeletons provides records of past ocean conditions, capturing fluctuations in temperature, nutrient levels, and circulation patterns. Like tree rings or ice cores, these reefs preserve history in their very structure. Because they grow in deep, cold, and stable water, corals and sponges also serve as sensitive indicators of environmental change. Small shifts in temperature, acidity, or oxygen concentration can halt their growth or dissolve their skeletons. The ocean's increasing absorption of carbon dioxide leads to acidification, which lowers pH and reduces the availability of carbonate ions needed for skeletal formation. For these reasons, scientists monitor deep reefs closely, viewing them as early warning systems for broader oceanic changes. Efforts to protect them combine international cooperation and advanced mapping. Many nations have established deep-sea marine protected areas where fishing and mining are restricted. Underwater surveys identify vulnerable ecosystems, and high-resolution sonar maps guide conservation boundaries. The goal is to preserve not only the corals themselves but the intricate web of life they sustain. Standing before a high-definition image of one of these coral forests, it is difficult not to sense the paradox they embody. They are built from hardness yet depend on stillness, ancient yet delicate, resilient yet easily destroyed. Their beauty lies not in abundance of color but in geometry, patience, and endurance. The deep ocean's fragile giants remind us that longevity depends on balance. To persist for millennia, they expend energy sparingly, live slowly, and rely on stability rather than speed. They are monuments to time, proof that strength in nature is often measured not by resistance but by the ability to last quietly, adapting with grace to the deep's unchanging calm. The deep sea may seem cut off from the surface, yet the two are tightly connected through a vast, circulating exchange of nutrients. What sinks eventually rises again. This constant turnover, known as upwelling, forms the bridge between the dark abyss and the sunlit waters above, feeding nearly every marine ecosystem on Earth. When microscopic organisms die or excrete waste, their remains drift downward as marine snow. As this organic matter decomposes, bacteria release nutrients such as nitrate, phosphate, and silicate into the surrounding water. Currents then carry these nutrients along the seafloor and into deep circulation pathways. Eventually, physical forces lift them back toward the surface, where sunlight and life are abundant once more. In that upward movement, the ocean regenerates itself. The process begins with the interaction between wind, the planet's rotation, and the shape of coastlines. When wind blows parallel to a shoreline, the Coriolis effect causes surface water to move away from the coast. Colder, nutrient-rich water from below rises to replace it. This coastal upwelling occurs in regions such as the eastern Pacific, off Peru and California, and along parts of Africa's western coast. The result is explosive productivity, blooms of phytoplankton that support fisheries, seabirds, and whales. Beyond coastlines, equatorial upwelling happens where trade winds pull surface waters apart on either side of the equator, allowing deep water to well upward. Even in the open ocean, small eddies and fronts mix layers, bringing nutrients to the surface on local scales. In contrast, downwelling regions carry oxygen-rich surface water into the depths, ensuring that deep ecosystems can breathe. Together, these vertical motions create a global conveyor of matter and energy, tying the shallow and deep seas into a single functioning system. Scientists study upwelling through satellite imagery and autonomous floats that track temperature and nutrient concentration. Chlorophyll measurements from space reveal vast green swirls where productivity surges. In situ sensors confirm that upwelled water is colder, denser, and loaded with dissolved nutrients. These data help predict seasonal fisheries and assess how climate variations like El Niño and La Niña alter the global balance of life. On a microscopic level, upwelling fuels the biological pump, the ocean's way of recycling carbon. Phytoplankton absorb carbon dioxide during photosynthesis. When they die, a fraction of that carbon sinks to depth, where it can remain stored for centuries before upwelling releases it again. The cycle regulates Earth's atmosphere and stabilizes climate. Without these nutrient-driven currents, the planet would warm more quickly, and the ocean surface would soon become impoverished, unable to sustain its teeming life. The chemistry of upwelling also influences oxygen distribution. As deep water ascends, it carries nutrients, but not much oxygen. Surface organisms consume what little it brings. In areas of strong productivity, decomposition can deplete oxygen further, forming oxygen minimum zones that stretch across thousands of kilometers. These expanding zones are a focus of modern research as they affect where marine species can live and how ecosystems will respond to a changing climate. Upwelling is not a steady flow but a pulse, rising and falling with winds, seasons, and the shifting energy of the planet. During some years, currents strengthen and life flourishes. In others, warm surface layers block the exchange and productivity collapses. The ocean breathes through these alternating rhythms, exhaling nutrients upward and inhaling carbon downward. For marine life, this circulation defines opportunity. Tiny plankton bloom where nutrients reach sunlight. Fish follow the plankton, predators follow the fish. From the smallest cell to the largest whale, the upward flow of deep water sustains every link in the chain. It is the unseen engine beneath all abundance, the quiet renewal that makes the ocean a living system rather than a static pool. When we picture the ocean, we often imagine waves and tides, but it is these vertical movements, slow, silent, and continuous, that maintain its vitality. Nutrients rising from the abyss are reminders that nothing in nature is truly separate. Even the darkest depths contribute to the brightness of life above, proving that renewal is not an exception in the ocean but its constant rule. Every ocean has a rhythm, a quiet pulse that carries through the water long after surface waves have disappeared. Scientists call it the internal tide, a deep, slow oscillation formed when ordinary tides meet underwater ridges and continental slopes. These invisible waves can rise hundreds of meters high, traveling thousands of kilometers across the basins. Though they move unseen, they mix layers, stir nutrients, and maintain the ocean's delicate temperature balance. In this motion, the sea keeps time with the planet itself. The physics behind it is elegant. As the moon's gravity tugs on the ocean, surface tides flow across the seafloor's rough landscape. Where slopes block the flow, water is forced upward, creating internal waves that move along density boundaries instead of the surface. These waves break silently in mid-water, releasing energy that blends warm and cold layers. This vertical mixing redistributes heat and sustains global circulation. Without it, the deep sea would stagnate, and the exchange of oxygen and nutrients would slow to stillness. The ocean's acoustic environment reflects these motions. Low-frequency sounds travel through channels of stable density, producing a continuous background hum. Whales use that hum as a reference, timing their calls to avoid overlap, while scientists detect the same vibrations with seismometers thousands of kilometers away. Each tone and echo is data, evidence of motion in a world that seems motionless. Even silence has structure. Currents move with precision that belies their scale. The thermohaline circulation, sometimes called the global conveyor belt, carries water masses between poles and tropics in loops that take centuries to complete. As cold, salty water sinks near Antarctica and the North Atlantic, warmer water rises elsewhere to replace it. This circulation balances temperature across the planet and moderates climate. The measured speed of that flow, only a few centimeters per second, is enough to link every ocean on Earth into a single continuous system. To those who listen, these patterns sound like breath. The planet inhales as cold water descends and exhales as warm water rises. The movement is perpetual but calm, driven not by urgency but by equilibrium. In that slow, repeating rhythm lies the basis of stability for all marine life. Fish, corals, and plankton respond to its cues, synchronizing reproduction and migration with tides and currents. The deep ocean, though silent to the ear, carries a music of balance that every living thing obeys. For researchers aboard submersibles or surface vessels, recording these processes often feels meditative. Instruments register fluctuations that seem almost like heartbeats, steady, low, and dependable. Graphs show oscillations that rise and fall with mathematical grace, their regularity bringing reassurance that the ocean still keeps its rhythm. The precision of these measurements is matched only by their serenity. For listeners here tonight, that same steadiness can serve as a reminder of natural order. The currents that move beneath continents have no haste, no interruption. Their constancy invites the body to slow as well. If your breathing has softened while listening, let it follow the same pattern, a gentle in-breath as cold water sinks, an unhurried out-breath as warmth rises. The ocean's motion and your own share the same design, cycles of balance, quiet, and renewal. Sleep, when it comes, is not withdrawal from the world, but alignment with it. Just as the deep sea maintains equilibrium through its slow pulse, rest restores balance in the human system. You do not force it, you drift into it, the way a current settles after crossing an open ridge. Beneath all activity, both ocean and mind find peace in rhythm. In this endless exchange of tides, sound, and breath, the ocean hums a lullaby older than any voice. Its tone is steady pressure, its melody the slow rise and fall of water. The same physics that governs waves guides the heartbeat and the breath, connecting the surface world with the abyss below. Within that shared pattern lies the promise of rest, a reminder that calm is not the absence of motion, but motion perfected. The deep ocean is a world of extremes, and those extremes shape the bodies of the creatures that live there. Two opposite trends dominate its evolution. Some species grow to enormous size, while others become astonishingly small. Scientists call these patterns deep-sea gigantism and miniaturization, contrasting strategies that solve the same problem: how to survive where food is scarce, pressure is immense, and temperature barely above freezing. Deep-sea gigantism appears across many lineages. The giant amphipod, for instance, reaches 20 centimeters in length, many times larger than its shallow water relatives. Giant isopods crawl across the sea floor like armored tanks, scavenging anything edible. The colossal squid, discovered in the Southern Ocean, possesses eyes the size of dinner plates, designed to detect faint glimmers of bioluminescent prey hundreds of meters away. Even single-celled organisms such as xenophyophores can grow several centimeters across, enormous for microscopic life. Several explanations account for this tendency. Low temperatures slow metabolism, allowing energy to accumulate for growth. Higher pressure increases the efficiency of oxygen transport in certain species. And in an environment with few predators, larger size becomes an advantage for storing energy and traveling long distances between meals. Big bodies also conserve heat and move efficiently through dense water, reducing energy costs per unit of mass. The result is a collection of giants that move slowly but endure for decades, perfectly tuned to scarcity. At the opposite end lies miniaturization. Many deep-sea species shrink to conserve resources. The bristlemouth fish, one of the most abundant vertebrates on Earth, is only a few centimeters long yet dominates the mid-water biomass. Microcrustaceans, larval forms, and tiny gelatinous creatures drift invisibly through the darkness, forming the base of many food webs. By remaining small, they require minimal energy, reproduce quickly, and survive where resources arrive in microscopic quantities. These two strategies coexist because each reflects a balance between energy gain and energy cost. In the deep sea, where pressure and cold limit metabolic speed, success depends on efficiency, not competition. Gigantism favors endurance. Miniaturization favors turnover. Both produce stability in ecosystems that appear harsh but function with mathematical precision. Physiological adaptations accompany these size extremes. Giant species often have slow heart rates and low metabolic demands. Their tissues contain high concentrations of ammonia, reducing density and helping them remain neutrally buoyant. Miniature species, by contrast, rely on rapid chemical reactions and thin membranes that speed nutrient exchange. In both, structure follows function, each cell shaped by the surrounding pressure, each molecule calibrated for survival. Because the deep sea is difficult to sample, much of what scientists know about these phenomena comes from remotely operated vehicles and baited cameras. When food falls from above, cameras record a sudden congregation. Large isopods and amphipods arrive first, followed by smaller scavengers and microbes that complete decomposition. This sequence mirrors the hierarchy of size and energy use, showing how the system recycles every fragment with near-perfect efficiency. Gigantism and miniaturization are not static traits. They evolve as environments change. In regions with abundant vent activity, smaller, faster species dominate. In colder, nutrient-poor basins, giants prevail. Climate-driven alterations in oxygen and temperature could shift this balance, making long-lived giants more vulnerable than flexible miniatures. Studying size patterns, therefore, offers clues to how the deep ocean will respond to global change. There is also an aesthetic dimension to this contrast. The sight of a colossal squid drifting beside translucent plankton illustrates the ocean's range of possibility. From immense to microscopic, every form expresses the same law of adaptation, equilibrium through difference. Nature fills every scale available to it, leaving no level of existence unused. Seen in this way, size becomes more than a measurement. It is a reflection of environment. Where resources are vast and sunlight strong, life tends toward abundance. Where energy is scarce, life divides itself into opposites, massive bodies that endure and minute ones that multiply. The deep sea holds both extremes in quiet coexistence, proving that survival is not a single design but a spectrum of solutions tuned to the physics of the world. If the deep ocean had a hidden engine, it would be microbial. Unseen to the eye but everywhere present, microorganisms form the foundation of nearly every process that keeps the abyss alive. They recycle nutrients, generate energy from chemistry, and bridge the worlds of rock and life. To understand the ocean's stability, one must begin not with whales or corals, but with bacteria and archaea, the smallest citizens of the largest ecosystem on Earth. The deep ocean contains enormous microbial diversity. Samples from sediments, vents, and mid-water layers reveal millions of genetic lineages, most of which remain undescribed. Many belong to the domain archaea, organisms distinct from bacteria and eukaryotes. They thrive under high pressure, low temperature, and chemical conditions toxic to most life. Others belong to specialized bacterial groups adapted to slow metabolism, living on trace amounts of energy in complete darkness. Microbes in the deep sea play crucial roles in the global biogeochemical cycles that sustain life. They oxidize sulfur, methane, and ammonia, converting these compounds into usable forms of energy. Some reduce metals or nitrates, balancing redox reactions that regulate the chemistry of seawater. This constant cycling of elements keeps carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur in circulation between the ocean, atmosphere, and crust. Without these invisible workers, nutrients would accumulate in unusable states, and higher life forms would vanish. On the seafloor, microbial mats coat sediments and rock surfaces, appearing as thin, colored films, white, orange, or yellow depending on their dominant elements. At hydrothermal vents, chemolitho-autotrophic bacteria use the energy released by reactions between water and volcanic minerals to fix carbon dioxide into organic matter. These organisms form the base of vent food webs, supporting worms, clams, and crabs. Far from vents, in the cold abyssal plains, microbial life continues quietly, decomposing marine snow and recycling it into new compounds. Every particle that sinks from the surface eventually passes through microbial hands. Many deep-sea microbes exist in symbiosis with larger hosts. In tube worms, mussels, and certain shrimp, bacteria live inside tissues, providing nutrition in exchange for stable conditions. Others colonize fish skin, shell surfaces, and even the guts of scavengers, breaking down complex molecules that would otherwise remain unused. This network of partnerships forms the ocean's unseen scaffolding, linking organisms that never meet through shared chemistry. Microbes also participate in long-term planetary processes. In the sediment beneath the seafloor, known as the deep biosphere, cells live buried under kilometers of rock, metabolizing at rates so slow that a single replication may take centuries. Yet collectively, they may contain as much biomass as all life in the surface ocean combined. They influence carbon storage, methane production, and mineral formation on geological timescales. Discoveries from deep drilling programs suggest that the boundary between life and non-life is less a line than a gradient, fading slowly into chemistry. Studying these organisms requires innovative methods. Because they die under normal atmospheric pressure, scientists use pressurized sampling chambers that maintain the conditions of the deep. Once recovered, DNA sequencing and isotopic analysis reveal their metabolic pathways. Each discovery expands the known limits of biology, showing how flexible and persistent life can be. Some of these metabolisms, particularly those using hydrogen and sulfur, mirror processes hypothesized for the earliest life on Earth, hinting that modern deep-sea microbes are living fossils of an ancient world. Their resilience also informs astrobiology. Environments such as the subsurface oceans of Europa or Enceladus may host similar chemical gradients. If life exists there, it might resemble Earth's deep microbial communities, powered by rock-water reactions rather than sunlight. Thus, the deep sea is both laboratory and mirror, allowing scientists to study what life might look like elsewhere in the universe. Yet, even within our own planet, these microorganisms maintain balance. They are the ocean's quiet accountants, ensuring that nothing is wasted, that every molecule finds its place. Their collective metabolism binds the system together, sustaining the higher forms we can see. To reflect on their presence is to appreciate how structure emerges from simplicity. A single microbe drifting in darkness may carry within it the same principles that govern galaxies: exchange, transformation, and equilibrium. The deep ocean's greatest secret may not be its vastness, but the minuteness of the life that keeps it breathing. Every breath taken on land connects, invisibly, to the chemistry of the sea. The ocean is Earth's largest active reservoir of carbon, storing about 50 times more than the atmosphere. It absorbs, transforms, and sequesters this element through a set of intertwined processes collectively called the marine carbon cycle. Nowhere are these processes more stable and enduring than in the deep ocean, the planet's greatest carbon sink. At the surface, carbon dioxide dissolves into seawater, where it reacts to form carbonic acid, bicarbonate, and carbonate ions. Marine plants and phytoplankton use dissolved carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, converting it into organic matter and releasing oxygen. When these microscopic producers die or are consumed, a fraction of their carbon sinks toward the abyss as part of marine snow. Each flake, composed of detritus and tiny shells, represents a packet of carbon being removed from the atmosphere. As this material descends, bacteria and zooplankton break much of it down, releasing carbon dioxide back into intermediate layers. Only a small percentage, roughly 1 to 2% of the original production, reaches the deep sea floor, yet that fraction is immense in global terms. Over thousands of years, it accumulates in sediments where it becomes locked away as organic matter or precipitated minerals. This downward transfer, known as the biological pump, is one of the primary mechanisms moderating Earth's climate. On geological timescales, the deep ocean also exchanges carbon through the solubility pump. Cold polar water absorbs carbon dioxide efficiently, sinks, and carries it into the interior of the ocean. As it moves along global circulation pathways, it stores carbon for centuries before returning to the surface and releasing a portion back into the air. This slow rotation acts as a thermostat, buffering temperature swings and maintaining atmospheric balance. Sediments provide the long-term archive of these exchanges. Layers rich in calcium carbonate and organic matter record variations in global carbon storage, mirroring past climate transitions. When scientists extract sediment cores, they read changes in isotopic ratios of carbon-13 and carbon-12 to reconstruct ocean circulation and atmospheric composition over millions of years. The evidence is clear. When the ocean stores more carbon, the planet cools. When it releases carbon, the planet warms. Human activity has begun to alter this equilibrium. The ocean now absorbs roughly a quarter of all carbon dioxide emitted by fossil fuel combustion. While this reduces the rate of atmospheric warming, it comes at a cost: ocean acidification. As carbonic acid forms, pH decreases, weakening shells and corals, and interfering with biochemical processes. Deep waters, once stable, are slowly becoming more corrosive to calcium carbonate, threatening organisms that build skeletons and protective structures. Researchers measure this shift using sensors that detect subtle changes in alkalinity even thousands of meters below the surface. The carbon sink is not a static vault but a living system. Microbes continue to process carbon even in the deepest sediments, converting it into methane or binding it to minerals. Tiny foraminifera incorporate carbon into their shells, which later compact into limestone. Hydrothermal vents release reduced carbon compounds back into circulation, completing cycles that run not in years but in ages. Understanding these processes is crucial for predicting climate futures. Climate models now couple atmospheric and oceanic carbon systems, simulating how rising temperatures alter circulation, solubility, and biological productivity. If circulation slows, less carbon will be stored. If plankton communities shift, the efficiency of the biological pump may change. The stability of human climate depends on the invisible labor of trillions of marine organisms moving carbon atom by atom into the deep. There is a quiet symmetry to this system. Carbon, the element of life, flows through every layer of the ocean, captured by sunlight at the surface, transformed by microbes in the mid-depths, and entombed in sediments far below. Each stage balances the next, creating a planetary rhythm of exchange that has held steady for eons. To contemplate it is to recognize a profound truth. The same element that fuels our breath also rests in silence beneath kilometers of water, waiting centuries before returning to air. Beneath the calm blue surface lies a topography more dramatic than any found on land. The ocean floor is a vast landscape of mountains, plateaus, valleys, and canyons, relief so immense that it shapes the planet's gravity field and influences global circulation. Only a small fraction has been directly mapped, yet what is known reveals that the deep sea is anything but flat. The tallest underwater ranges are the mid-ocean ridges, which encircle the planet like seams on a sphere. They form where tectonic plates pull apart and molten rock rises to create new crust. Peaks along these ridges can rise more than 2 kilometers above the surrounding seafloor, producing an unbroken mountain chain longer than all continental ranges combined. Lava emerging here cools rapidly, forming pillow-shaped basalt that builds layer upon layer, expanding the ocean basins outward. Between ridges stretch the abyssal plains, and beyond them lie the oceanic trenches, the deepest depressions on Earth. These trenches mark zones where one plate slides beneath another, descending into the mantle. The Mariana Trench, the deepest known, plunges nearly 11 kilometers, deep enough to hold Mount Everest with 2 kilometers of water still above its peak. Pressure here exceeds 1,000 atmospheres, yet life persists. Amphipods, snailfish, and microbial mats flourish where chemistry provides energy. Seamounts punctuate the plains like islands of rock, often remnants of extinct volcanoes. Many host coral gardens and sponge fields that thrive in cold, nutrient-rich currents. Some seamounts form linear chains tracing the movement of tectonic plates over stationary mantle plumes, the same process that built the Hawaiian Islands. Others rise steeply and create turbulence that enhances local productivity by mixing deep and surface waters. These submerged mountains serve as waypoints for migrating species and as biological hotspots in otherwise sparse environments. Mapping these structures relies on multi-beam sonar and satellite altimetry. Ships equipped with sonar send out acoustic pulses that bounce off the seafloor. The time taken for the echo to return reveals depth. Satellites measure subtle changes in sea surface height caused by variations in gravity. Where mass is greater below, water bulges slightly upward. Combining these methods has given scientists detailed maps of ridge systems, trenches, and seamounts, though much of the ocean remains charted only at coarse resolution. The International Seabed 2030 project aims to map the entire seafloor by the end of the next decade, an endeavor as ambitious as exploring another planet. The geology of these hidden landscapes controls much of the ocean's chemistry. Where ridges vent minerals, they feed hydrothermal ecosystems. Where trenches subduct sediments, they recycle carbon and nutrients into Earth's interior. Earthquakes and submarine landslides reshape slopes, sometimes generating tsunamis that travel thousands of kilometers. Even small changes in this terrain can alter current patterns and, over time, global climate behavior. For marine scientists, descending into these terrains is like entering a mountain world turned inside out. Submersible cameras reveal cliffs coated with manganese crusts, sediment avalanches frozen in motion, and faint wisps of bioluminescent plankton drifting along rocky faces. At such depths, the distinction between geology and biology blurs. Rocks breathe hydrogen and methane. Microbes etch mineral surfaces. Coral colonies build limestone frameworks that become geology themselves. The deep topography reminds us that the ocean floor is not a passive boundary, but an active, evolving frontier. Every ridge, rise, and trench descent participates in the slow cycle that renews Earth's crust and drives its atmosphere. What appears still from above is a living architecture of heat, gravity, and time. To imagine it clearly is to invert our sense of scale. The tallest peaks and deepest valleys are hidden under kilometers of water, unseen yet shaping the surface world. In those submerged mountains and trenches lies the planet's unspoken structure, the scaffolding on which every current, climate, and coastline depends. The deep sea is not emptiness, it is Earth's foundation, sculpted in silence and revealed only to those who listen with patience. Every living system depends on energy flow, and in the deep sea, that flow is measured not in sunlight, but in gradients, differences of temperature, chemistry, and motion that drive transformation. The abyss receives less than 1/10,000th of the solar energy that warms the surface, yet it maintains intricate life cycles through efficiency alone. The key is balance, the careful accounting of every joule moving between heat, pressure, and chemical potential. Energy enters the deep ocean through three primary routes. The first is solar inheritance, organic matter produced in surface waters that drifts downward as marine snow. The second is geothermal heat, leaking through the crust at mid-ocean ridges and hydrothermal vents. The third is mechanical motion from tides and currents, which inject kinetic energy that dissipates as mixing and internal waves. Together, these sources sustain a stable yet dynamic system, each compensating for the others in magnitude and timing. At the sea floor, geothermal heat provides localized intensity. Temperatures near hydrothermal vents can exceed 300 degrees Celsius, but that heat fades quickly into the surrounding 2-degree water. The steep thermal gradient fuels convection that redistributes minerals and sustains chemosynthetic microbes. Globally, however, geothermal energy contributes less than 1% of the ocean's total heat content. Its significance lies not in quantity, but in concentration. Tiny regions of power supporting oases of life amid vast cold plains. The larger, slower reservoir is the ocean's thermal inertia. Water has a remarkable specific heat capacity, allowing it to store and transport enormous amounts of energy with minimal temperature change. This property gives the deep ocean its stability. While air can swing from hot to cold in hours, deep water may vary by only fractions of a degree across centuries. The exchange of heat between surface and depth, mediated by thermohaline circulation, acts as a planetary buffer, moderating climate and preventing abrupt shifts. Mechanical energy from tides and winds adds motion where heat cannot. As tides move across seafloor ridges, they generate internal waves that travel through density layers, eventually breaking and mixing water masses. This mixing is essential for distributing oxygen and nutrients, linking energy between the surface and the abyss. Though imperceptible to human senses, it represents a global power flux roughly equal to the combined output of all the planet's rivers. Biologically, energy balance defines strategy. In darkness, organisms rely on metabolic thrift. Some species digest slowly, spacing meals by months. Others form symbioses with bacteria that provide steady nutrition. Enzymes evolve to function at low temperatures and high pressures, reducing energy waste. Every heartbeat, every flick of a fin, is optimized to preserve the narrow margins that make life sustainable in scarcity. Even decay contributes to equilibrium. When organisms die, their stored chemical energy becomes the foundation for microbial communities that dismantle molecules into simpler forms. Heat released by decomposition warms the immediate surroundings slightly, a microscopic echo of the geothermal cycle. In the deep sea, nothing is truly lost. Energy merely shifts from one expression to another. Scientists quantify these exchanges using instruments that measure temperature gradients, oxygen consumption, and particulate flux. Long-term data show that while surface heat content rises due to global warming, the deep ocean continues to absorb excess energy, delaying atmospheric change. Yet this buffering capacity is not infinite. As warmer water penetrates deeper layers, it alters circulation patterns, reducing oxygen and affecting organisms adapted to near-constant conditions. The ocean's ability to maintain equilibrium depends on the same principle that governs living systems: adaptation through gradual adjustment, not resistance. Viewed on planetary scale, the deep sea is both engine and capacitor. It stores energy, releases it slowly, and maintains the continuity that makes Earth habitable. In silence and darkness, it demonstrates that stability is not the absence of change but the mastery of it, an unbroken conversation between heat and cold, motion and stillness, abundance and need. The deep sea is not just a place of the present, it is also a vast archive, a living record of the planet's memory. Each layer of sediment, each fossil shell, and every trapped molecule of gas carries evidence of what Earth once was. Time here does not move forward in a line. It settles, accumulates, and waits. To study the deep ocean is to listen to echoes that began long before humanity learned to measure them. Sediments at the bottom of the ocean build slowly, millimeter by millimeter over centuries. Dust from continents, volcanic ash, microscopic shells, and organic debris all drift downward, forming layered blankets that preserve events in sequence. By extracting sediment cores, scientists can read this history with remarkable precision. The ratio of oxygen isotopes in microscopic foraminifera reveals past temperatures, layers rich in iron mark episodes of volcanic activity. Sudden shifts in composition record changes in ocean circulation and global climate. Each centimeter of mud may represent hundreds of years, compressed into silence. The deepest cores reach back more than 100 million years, showing how oceans expanded, contracted, and changed composition as continents drifted. They record mass extinctions, periods of high carbon dioxide, and moments when the planet cooled into ice. Within these patterns lies a message of continuity. No condition lasts forever, but the system endures through transformation. The ocean forgets nothing, it merely stores its memories in forms we are only beginning to decode. Beyond sediments, the chemistry of deep water itself holds a short-term memory of the atmosphere. Because circulation through the thermohaline system takes roughly a millennium, Water in the abyss today reflects air conditions from ancient times. Measuring dissolved gases and isotopic tracers allows scientists to trace this movement and reconstruct how carbon and oxygen have shifted over centuries. The ocean becomes not only a sink but a time machine, revealing the delayed response of the planet's systems to changes above. Sound, too, carries time across the depths. Low-frequency vibrations produced by storms, earthquakes, and calving icebergs travel through the SOFAR channel with little loss, sometimes circling the globe. By analyzing the arrival times of these natural signals, researchers can monitor ocean temperature and structure without deploying physical probes. Because sound speed increases with warmth, the deep sea effectively becomes an acoustic thermometer extending across decades. Fossils retrieved from abyssal plains offer snapshots of ancient ecosystems. The remains of plankton species show how biological communities evolved alongside chemical change. Some sediments even contain preserved DNA, fragments of genetic information that reveal who once lived there. From these records, scientists trace the resilience of life, how it survived warming, cooling, and oxygen depletion again and again. In recent decades, technology has allowed continuous monitoring of the ocean's historical pulse. Long-term observatories anchored to the seabed collect data on currents, temperature, and seismic activity, transmitting a constant stream of information. When compiled over years, these records show how small fluctuations accumulate into trends, confirming what geology already implies. The deep sea operates on scales of time far beyond human perspective. To think of time this way changes our relationship to it. On land, we count by seasons, years, and generations. In the ocean, moments blur into geological rhythm. The same processes shaping the seabed today began before the first forests appeared on land and will continue long after today's continents have shifted again. The deep sea embodies duration itself, motion so slow that it feels like stillness. For the scientists who study it, this realization brings humility. Every measurement, every core sample, is a dialogue with history, a chance to hear what the planet remembers. And for the rest of us, it is a reminder that permanence is not found in what remains unchanged, but in what persists through change. The ocean keeps its balance because it embraces transformation. In its depths, time does not vanish. It settles, layer upon layer, forming the quiet structure of endurance. As the journey through the ocean's depths continues, motion slows, and the world becomes almost still. Beyond 6,000 meters, below the last flicker of sunlight and the reach of most currents, the water thickens into near silence. Here, pressure holds everything steady, and temperature hovers just above freezing. Scientists call this region the Hadal Zone, a realm shaped by trenches, arcs, and the slow settling of life into its most efficient form. It is the ocean's quietest domain, and in its calm, the laws of physics and biology merge into balance. Life here is sparse but not absent. Transparent amphipods glide through the blackness, feeding on organic particles that have fallen for months from far above. Snailfish, adapted to pressure that would crush metal, drift with soft bodies and fluid bones. Their enzymes and cell membranes are modified to remain flexible, preventing collapse under more than 1,000 atmospheres. Bacteria and archaea coat the sediment, transforming what little carbon arrives into energy that circulates slowly but continuously. The metabolism of the deep is patience itself, measured not in seconds or minutes, but in years. Research into this zone relies on specialized landers, metal frames lowered for hours or days into the trench, carrying cameras and sensors that record without human presence. When retrieved, they reveal glimpses of stillness that defy expectation. Delicate creatures suspended mid-water, bioluminescent trails fading like starlight, sediment plumes rising and settling with the rhythm of a heartbeat slowed by gravity and time. Even here, movement exists, but it is reduced to its purest function, stability through equilibrium. From a physical perspective, the Hadal zone serves as the ocean's final regulator. It receives and traps dense, carbon-rich water that has traveled for centuries through global circulation. There, in darkness, organic matter is compressed, buried, and eventually incorporated into the planet's crust. The trenches act as storage vaults for carbon, buffering atmospheric change and completing the slow exchange that governs climate. Pressure, temperature, and chemical gradients converge in harmony. Heat from the mantle rises through fissures and dissipates gradually. Salts crystallize into new minerals. Gases dissolve and re-emerge. Every interaction follows thermodynamic law, yet the sum of these reactions produces serenity. In the deep, physics becomes meditation, the universe tending toward balance, one molecule at a time. For those who listen, this world carries the same cadence as rest. The absence of light removes distraction. The constancy of pressure eliminates variation. Everything proceeds at the minimum energy required to continue existing. If you find your thoughts slowing, let them follow that principle. Rest does not mean stopping. It means reaching equilibrium. Like the ocean, the mind can settle into its own steady density, drifting just enough to stay alive. Sleep arrives in much the same way. It is not forced but allowed, the product of balance between activity and surrender. As the body releases tension, breathing deepens, echoing the slow rhythm of the abyssal currents. Just as dense water sinks and warm water rises, consciousness drifts between wakefulness and quiet restoration. The process is natural, continuous, and necessary. Scientists who study the Hadal zone often describe its calm as absolute, yet the data they retrieve show subtle motion everywhere, a tremor of tides, a shift in chemistry, a flicker of light. Even in rest, the ocean remains active. It simply moves at a scale that feels eternal. In that sense, sleep is not different. Beneath stillness, countless adjustments keep the system whole. Cells repair, neurons reset, and energy redistributes. Rest is balance expressed through biology. To imagine this depth is to sense what peace in motion truly means. The pressure that would crush stone instead maintains perfect shape. The cold that halts speed preserves form, and the silence that seems empty is filled with continuity. So, too, with rest, nothing is lost, only reorganized into order. As you picture the trench settling under kilometers of water, let your own awareness sink with it, calm and unhurried, until balance becomes effortless. When scientists peer into the deep ocean, they are also looking outward, to the stars, the icy moons, and the distant planets that might hold their own hidden seas. The Hadal trenches and hydrothermal vents on Earth provide natural laboratories for astrobiology, the study of how life might arise elsewhere. By understanding how organisms thrive in darkness, pressure, and chemical extremes, researchers are rewriting the boundaries of what it means for a world to be habitable. Among the most compelling analogues are the moons Europa, orbiting Jupiter, and Enceladus, orbiting Saturn. Both show evidence of global oceans sealed beneath thick shells of ice. Data from spacecraft have detected geysers of water vapor and organic molecules erupting through cracks in their frozen surfaces. These plumes suggest a dynamic interior heated by tidal flexing, the constant stretching and squeezing caused by gravitational forces. The chemistry inferred from these emissions resembles the mineral-rich environment around Earth's hydrothermal vents, where life thrives without sunlight. On our planet, deep-sea ecosystems depend on chemosynthesis, the conversion of inorganic molecules into energy. If similar processes occur on those distant moons, microbes could inhabit the interface between rock and water, drawing energy from hydrogen, methane, or sulfur compounds. The discovery of such life would prove that biology is not a rare event but a natural outcome of chemistry when the conditions are right. To explore these analog worlds, Scientists test instruments in Earth's oceans. Autonomous vehicles designed for Europa are trialed in Antarctic subglacial lakes and hydrothermal regions of the Pacific. These prototypes must operate in complete darkness, navigate without GPS, and withstand pressure equivalent to kilometers of ice. Sensors measure temperature, salinity, and trace organic molecules, while sterile sampling systems prevent contamination, essential precautions for missions that might one day touch an alien sea. Back on Earth, studying the genetics of deep-sea microbes helps define what biologists call the limits of life. Some organisms reproduce at pressures exceeding 1,000 atmospheres, others metabolize sulfuric acid or survive freezing brines. These discoveries have expanded the known range of conditions compatible with biology, forcing a re-evaluation of where life might exist beyond our planet. It no longer requires sunlight or oxygen, only energy, liquid water, and stability over time. Even within our solar system, potential habitats extend beyond icy moons. The clouds of Venus, the subsurface of Mars, and the methane lakes of Titan all share chemical features with environments known on Earth's seafloor. The ocean, once viewed as uniquely terrestrial, now serves as a cosmic template for habitability. Each trench, vent, and seep mirrors a possibility elsewhere in the universe. There is also a philosophical dimension to this connection. In studying the deep sea, humanity confronts the same mystery it seeks among the stars: the persistence of order amid chaos. Both realms operate under the same physical laws: thermodynamics, diffusion, and chemical equilibrium. Whether in a trench 6,000 meters below the Pacific or beneath the ice of Europa, the pattern of life follows the same logic: structure emerging from energy gradients, cooperation from constraint. The deep ocean teaches that darkness is not emptiness, and that isolation does not mean absence of life. It reminds us that even under crushing force, chemistry can give rise to complexity and purpose. If life exists elsewhere, it may not look like ours, but it will likely share the same quiet tenacity that defines Earth's abyssal organisms. When spacecraft eventually descend through alien ice, their sensors will seek signs we already know: sulfur, methane, amino acids, the faint chemical fingerprints of metabolism. And somewhere, deep within an extraterrestrial sea, a reaction might occur that mirrors one happening right now on Earth's seafloor: hydrogen meeting carbon, releasing energy, building molecules that endure. In that moment, two oceans, one terrestrial, one distant, will echo each other across space and time, proving that life's rhythm is universal. For most of history, the deep ocean remained untouched, its vastness a shield against change. Today, that illusion of permanence is fading. As technology reaches greater depths and human influence extends across the planet, even the darkest waters are beginning to feel the imprint of surface life. Scientists now look downward not only to explore but also to protect, a shift from curiosity to stewardship of one of Earth's last frontiers. The deep sea acts as the planet's stabilizer, regulating temperature, carbon, and chemistry. Yet that balance depends on delicate processes easily disturbed. Rising global temperatures warm the surface and alter the density gradients that drive thermohaline circulation. As a result, oxygen-rich water mixes less efficiently with the abyss, reducing oxygen availability and threatening organisms adapted to constant conditions. Some models predict expanding oxygen minimum zones and slower nutrient cycling, which could reshape entire ecosystems over the next century. Another concern is acidification. As atmospheric carbon dioxide increases, more dissolves into seawater, forming carbonic acid. The resulting drop in pH weakens shells and skeletons made of calcium carbonate, structures essential for deep corals and many plankton species. Even small changes can disrupt growth that took centuries to achieve. Scientists have already documented areas of the North Pacific where naturally high carbon levels have combined with anthropogenic inputs to erode shells faster than they can form. Human activity reaches the seafloor in other ways. Plastic particles have been found in sediments from the deepest trenches, carried by currents and settling among ancient deposits. Chemical pollutants from rivers and industries accumulate on particles that sink, concentrating toxins where life is slowest to recover. The deep sea's ability to store waste is deceptive. It does not neutralize it, only delays its return. The most immediate challenge comes from resource extraction. Vast fields of polymetallic nodules rich in cobalt, nickel, and manganese cover abyssal plains, minerals valuable for batteries and electronics. Companies are preparing for large-scale mining, using robotic harvesters that scrape nodules from the sea floor. Each operation would disturb sediments, release carbon, and destroy habitats that may take millennia to regenerate. Scientists and policymakers are now debating regulations under the International Seabed Authority to ensure that exploration proceeds only with full understanding of ecological costs. Efforts to protect the deep are growing. Marine protected areas have expanded to include abyssal habitats, and international research programs now coordinate long-term monitoring of key sites. Instruments measure changes in temperature, chemistry, and biological activity, establishing baselines for future comparison. The principle guiding these initiatives is simple. We cannot safeguard what we do not understand. Every expedition, every sample, adds to a collective awareness of what is at stake. Technology that once served exploration now aids preservation. High-resolution sonar and imaging allow mapping without disturbance. AI-driven models predict ecosystem vulnerability, and autonomous sensors can track pollution dispersal across vast areas. Data sharing between nations ensures transparency, turning the ocean from a frontier of competition into one of cooperation. Philosophically, the future of the deep invites reflection on responsibility. The same ingenuity that allows humanity to reach these depths also obliges it to act with restraint. The ocean is not a limitless resource, but a living system with boundaries. Its capacity to absorb imbalance, thermal, chemical, or biological, is finite. Recognizing those limits marks a turning point in our relationship with the planet. Still, there is hope in knowledge. The more precisely scientists measure, the more clearly patterns of resilience emerge. Deep ecosystems recover slowly, but they do recover. Microbial networks re-establish chemical cycles. Larvae recolonize disturbed areas. Corals grow again on ancient skeletons. The ocean's strength lies in its continuity, a self-repairing rhythm built into its structure. What humanity chooses to do next will determine how that rhythm endures. The deep sea, once a mystery of distance, is now a mirror of consequence. Its silence reflects not emptiness but attention, a reminder that the farther we explore, the more deeply we must listen. In understanding its future, we define our own. Although we divide the seas into names and boundaries, the Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, Arctic, and Southern, science reveals that they are, in truth, one body of water. Beneath surface distinctions of temperature and color lies a single continuous system that circulates around the planet. The deep sea binds the world together, not metaphorically but physically, forming the most extensive interconnected habitat known. Every current, organism, and chemical exchange participates in this unity, ensuring that no ocean truly stands apart. This continuity is maintained by the global conveyor belt of circulation. Deep waters formed near the poles travel through the Atlantic, flow around Africa, and spread into the Indian and Pacific basins before gradually rising and returning to the surface. This journey redistributes heat, oxygen, and nutrients across thousands of kilometers. A shift in one region can eventually echo through all others, a planetary-scale feedback loop that keeps climate, chemistry, and biology aligned. the water beneath one coastline may, centuries later, nourish coral thousands of miles away. The unity of the ocean extends to life itself. Many species rely on global pathways rather than local boundaries. Whales migrate across hemispheres following the patterns of productivity set by upwelling zones. Turtles and tuna cross entire basins to reach breeding grounds mapped by instinct and magnetic memory. Even microscopic plankton drift on currents that link poles to tropics, carrying genetic material that maintains diversity across the world's waters. DNA studies confirm that populations once thought isolated are often genetically continuous, connected by invisible highways of flow. From a chemical perspective, the ocean behaves as a self-regulating system. Carbon absorbed in one hemisphere may resurface in another. Nutrients consumed in coastal zones eventually return through deep circulation. Trace elements such as iron, zinc, and silica travel vast distances attached to sinking particles, ensuring that even the most remote regions receive the ingredients of life. The global balance depends on constant exchange, a harmony sustained by movement rather than stillness. Sound further demonstrates this connectedness. Low-frequency waves generated by storms or earthquakes travel through the SOFAR channel, circling the planet multiple times. A single signal released in the Pacific can be detected in the Atlantic weeks later. Researchers use these transmissions to measure ocean temperature and monitor seismic events, but they also remind us that the sea has no true edge. Its acoustic world is continuous, a single resonant space beneath the continents. Culturally, humanity's understanding of the ocean has often been shaped by distance and division. Nations draw borders on the water's surface, yet the reality below those lines is cooperative rather than competitive. Currents ignore maps. Life crosses invisible boundaries without effort. Recognizing the ocean's unity challenges us to see stewardship as a collective responsibility rather than a regional task. The health of one sea is the health of all. From a systems perspective, this unity is essential for planetary stability. The ocean moderates climate, cycles energy, and maintains the chemical composition of the atmosphere. It supports ecosystems that feed billions and absorbs much of the excess heat produced by human activity. No other component of Earth's system connects so many processes so seamlessly. When scientists model global change, they treat the ocean not as 5 regions but as one dynamic continuum, a single organ in the body of the planet. To reflect on this vast interconnection is to glimpse an elegant principle: balance through wholeness. The deep sea does not resist division because it cannot be divided. Every drop of water eventually mingles with another. Every molecule follows the same gravitational curve, and every current contributes to the stability of the whole. The ocean's unity is not just geographical, it is structural, chemical, and biological. In this way, the deep sea embodies a truth that extends beyond water. Systems endure when they remain connected. Life, energy, and equilibrium all depend on circulation, on exchange, on the recognition that boundaries are temporary patterns within a continuous field. The ocean teaches that unity is not the absence of difference, but the seamless integration of all differences into motion. Beneath its waves, the planet holds a single breath shared across every depth. In the quiet depths of the planet, the ocean carries a sound so low it is almost below hearing, a steady hum born from tides, shifting currents, and distant storms. Instruments record it as background noise, but to the imagination it feels like breath, the slow exhalation of a world that never stops moving. Scientists call it the deep ocean microsystem, a vibration that travels through rock and water alike, linking every basin in a single pulse. It is the ocean's whisper, faint yet constant, marking the rhythm of Earth itself. This hum is not poetic invention but measurable fact. Sensitive hydrophones detect oscillations at frequencies between 1/10 and 1 Hz, caused by the interference of ocean waves. When two wave systems moving in opposite directions meet, their pressure variations combine and transmit energy downward through the seafloor. The resulting tremor resonates across continents and is recorded by seismic stations thousands of kilometers away. Even in complete stillness, the planet vibrates with the motion of the sea. For geophysicists, these microseisms are valuable tools. By analyzing their travel times and amplitudes, scientists infer the structure of Earth's crust and mantle. Variations reveal seasonal changes in storm intensity, sea ice cover, and global climate patterns. The ocean, in effect, speaks continuously about the state of the world, translating wind and weather into sound waves that circle the globe without pause. To the human ear, this low frequency lies below perception, yet its constancy has a psychological weight. Knowing that the planet hums, softly, endlessly, can feel like reassurance. The same vibrations that shape seismographs also pass through every body of water, every grain of sand, even the air we breathe. They remind us that rest does not require silence, only steadiness. If you are listening now, let your own breathing find that same pace. Slow, rhythmic, unforced. Each inhale a small rising tide, each exhale a retreating wave. Just as the deep ocean balances pressure and motion, your body balances wakefulness and rest. There is no separation between the two, only gradual transition guided by rhythm. Sleep, in its essence, is a return to equilibrium. It mirrors the deep ocean's constant adjustments, molecules exchanging heat, currents redistributing salt, sediments settling layer by layer. Nothing stops, everything simply slows to the rate of balance. As the mind drifts toward quiet, it follows the same physics that keeps the sea stable, energy conserved, motion transformed into calm. The hum of the ocean continues through night and day, a signal of persistence beneath the surface of change. It is older than speech and younger than the next wave, steady as gravity, patient as time. Listening to it, even in imagination, is like standing at the threshold of stillness itself. In the end, the ocean does not shout its wisdom. It murmurs it continuously, in frequencies that most ears cannot detect, but every life depends upon. Its whisper says that balance is possible, that rest is natural, and that movement and peace can exist together. So as you let the last thoughts of the day settle, think of that quiet vibration passing through stone and water, connecting every shore. It has no beginning and no end, only rhythm. Let that rhythm be yours for the night, deep, slow, and sure. We from Sleepy Stories wish you a good night.